Hey everybody, welcome back to Nikki T Live. I'm your host Nick Taylor, and today I'm hanging out with Jamin Holmgren. I think I've said your last name a couple times. Is that correct, the pronunciation?
That is correct. Yeah, you said it correctly.
Okay, cool. Yeah, yeah, I'm super excited to be hanging with you today. We'll get into all that, but before we get started, for folks who might not know who you are, or for people to look up to you upping their tractor game, who are you exactly?
Like you said, I'm Jamin Holmgren. I am the co-founder and CTO of Infinite Red, and I live in well, currently sunny but usually rainy Pacific Northwest of the U.S. And um, I live here with my wife Kyra and our four kids. Well, three of our four kids. One already moved out
Okay,
because they're 10 years old up to 19 years old.
okay,
And yeah, so I've been doing consulting for 19 years now. I think I started my first consultancy when I was 23.
okay.
And so it's just been something I've done for a very long time. And I started coding when I was 12, so I started doing like, Cube Basic, like little games,
Okay, yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I think I might be a little older than you, but yeah, I remember QBasic and we had the first computer I had was a VIC-20 from Commodore, and like
Okay.
all I remember is doing QBasic and you basically loop over printing your name on the screen, and like that was just like
Yeah.
the coolest thing, or at least when I
Yes.
was that young. Also,
Yeah.
just a couple of folks in the chat saying hello. Nate Emerson's there saying
Yeah.
hey,
Hey, what's up, Nate?
and I see Gant over on
Yeah.
YouTube. So hey, Gant, thanks for joining us. Gant also works at Infinite Red for folks who might not
Yeah.
know
My
who's
business
joining the
partner.
stream. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, Gant's awesome as well. I mean, we're hanging with Jamin today,
He
but
is.
I've had the privilege of hanging with Gant when I was working at Dev2 on the Dev2 stream, and we did lots of fun AI stuff. So maybe I'll see
Yeah.
if I can get Gant on here at some point again.
Yeah, you totally
But yeah.
should. Yeah. He's a lot more fun than I am. So,
Yeah,
you
cool,
know.
cool. Yeah, and there's also Mark in the chat. Mark Rickard, is that somebody you know?
Yeah, Mark
Or
Mark is also at Infinite Red. I've
oh,
known Mark
okay,
for over a decade now.
okay, cool. So Infinite Red's where you've been working for pretty much the last 9 years, I think you said.
Yep.
Um, so you're a React Native consultancy company, and I'm super familiar with React. Like I'm currently working with React in Next.js right now, but I've worked with other flavors like Preact.js at Dev2, and worked
Hmm.
with different runtimes and stuff. But I'm curious because although I have experience with React, I'm not a mobile developer. Like I've never built an
Hmm.
actual mobile application aside from, like I mentioned just before the stream, I've done like kind of like a hello world with Expo.
Yeah.
So and I'm sure these are questions you've answered before, but like
Yeah.
how good is React Native compared to just actual native code, whether that's
Hmm.
Swift or Objective C or Cocoa or like Kotlin or whatever people are doing
Right.
Android in.
Yeah. So I think one thing that really attracted me to React Native from the very start was that they really treat their goal is to have it be at par with native
Okay.
feel. Um, and they do so with native components. In fact, it actually like part of their kind of ethos is that it's less important that the two platforms have like consistency between them, and more
Okay.
important that it's consistent for the native platform itself. And so
Okay.
under the hood, you have like a JavaScript engine uh, running your JavaScript, but that's orchestrating native views, actual native views, like UI view.
Okay.
On Android, you'd have Android layout, like those views. So you can actually, if you inspect like in Xcode or Android Studio, and you do like the layout inspector and look at the actual native view hierarchy, you'll see
Okay.
native views there when you're building a React Native app, which makes it
Okay.
feel like a native app because it is a native app. The only thing that's different is that instead of having Swift or Kotlin telling telling it when to build a native view. You have JavaScript telling it when to build a
Yeah.
native view.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And Gat in the chat said, "Don't sell yourself short, Jamin." So, um, yeah, and I guess this brings up another thing. Like we're gonna dig into a few things. We're gonna talk about an open source project called Ignite that your company has built over time. But I guess yeah, like what does the debug story look like exactly? Because like I'm super familiar with web dev debugger tools, whether that's like V8 and you got the browser engine dev
Yeah.
tools, or you're debugging in VS Code. But because the React Native code is actually generating like whatever the JSX is
Hmm.
generates native stuff. Like I guess I'm assuming you still have to be familiar with native code development to some degree. Like it's not just all magic like everything in JavaScript or
Right. Yeah, this is one of the trade-offs you have, and you're going to have to do that anyway, no matter what you do. There's no such thing as a
okay.
magic bullet that just makes it all be like web, unless you're using like a browser. But then you have a problem, like PWAs or something. But then you have the problem of not being
Okay.
able to deliver the native feeling experience.
Yeah.
So that's definitely the case. Expo makes it a lot easier, and we can certainly talk more about that.
Okay.
Right now, the React Native space is in a little bit of flux because our old debugger Flipper is going away, and there's a new one coming onto
Okay.
the scene called the React or the React Native JS Inspector, and
Okay.
that is usually referred to as the new debugger. And
Okay.
when that lands, it's supposed to like bring in a lot more of the kind of web sort of feel to React Native, but we're in between
Okay.
right now, so the
Okay.
story's a
Gotcha.
little bit muddled right now. In fact, we just talked about this a bit on a recent React Native radio episode. That's my podcast about React Native.
Yeah.
And so if you're interested in learning more about all the React Native stuff, that's kind of the top React Native podcast to go listen to, and it'll we talk about um the debugger. We talk about the dev menu, which pops up like if you shake the device and want to do
Okay.
things like reload the screen and things like that. A lot of
Yeah.
these
I
types
actually
of
caught it.
what's that? Sorry.
I caught the episode where you were talking about Flipper. I
Oh,
think it's
yeah,
the
yeah.
most recent one. Yeah.
Yep, that's
Yeah,
right.
no, it's a good listen. You're there like, this was
Yeah.
supposed to be a 10-minute podcast. And then it
Well, we started this new series called React Native Radio Explains, and I thought it was going to be like
okay.
short, punchy, like bang bang, because we were going to keep it really focused. Like all we're going to talk about is the dev menu. Like this is a tiny thing, and it ended up being
Yeah.
like a 30 minutes, podcast of just like tons of stuff going on. So I mean that was
Yeah.
it was fun because we got to really explore some stuff in depth that we don't normally get to.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, and it is a good list. I've caught a few episodes because, like, even though I'm not really in the React Native ecosystem, at least not yet, it's
Hmm.
just been interesting just to listen to the goings on and stuff. And uh, we're definitely gonna get to Ignite, but like, I'm curious about stuff like because like uh, JavaScript is it's single threaded. You can have other stuff like web workers and all that. Like, how does
Hmm.
that work in the context of a native app? Like, I'm throwing a few things here, which I know you're all familiar with, but like there's
Yeah.
the Hermes engine, which is I think
Hmm.
Meta created to make a more optimized runtime for React Native. Is that about right? Or
Yeah, not only runtime but actual JavaScript engine as well. So,
oh, okay, okay,
like they normally when React Native started, it used JavaScript Core (JSC), which is
okay,
a fairly common, that's the same JavaScript engine, for example, that Bun uses under the hood. And this would
yeah,
be as opposed to something like V8,
okay,
which is like what powers Chrome and Brave and Node. Um,
yeah,
there are other JavaScript engines coming out as well, and also different runtimes. You could really think of React Native as being the runtime, React Native itself,
okay,
and then JSC or Hermes as being the
hmm,
engine underneath it. And yeah, they
okay,
rewrote they wrote their own. And the reason was because when you think about it, there's different types of contexts that JavaScript run in. So you have things like Node or Bun or something like that that's on the server side, and those
yeah,
even have their own different performance characteristics. And then you have browsers, and browsers need their own thing. And what about a CLI versus like a server? Like a server needs to
Yeah.
sit there running and handle requests really fast, and kind of like that's where something like a JIT, a just-in-time compiler, can be really helpful, because
Hmm.
as time goes on, it gets faster and faster. It optimizes the code on the run. But if you have something like a CLI, or let's say
Yeah.
a function like an edge function that just runs and then quits, then you just need it to start really quickly and then get out of the way. And
Yeah. Okay.
mobile apps are kind of in between, where you need that instantaneous startup, because you hit the icon on the desktop, or your phone. You need that thing to pop open as fast as possible. That's what users expect. They want it to open up. They don't want to be sitting around while they're waiting to like tweet
Yeah.
their latest thought or whatever. So
Yeah.
uh, you need that thing to really load up quickly. And JSC was more optimized for longer running stuff, for stuff that would take, like in a browser or something like that. And it wasn't really
Okay.
optimized for fast startup. Plus, Apple actually disallows just-in-time compilers if you're not using their built-in JSC, because they have
Oh,
JavaScript
okay.
core built into it. So you have to
Oh,
either
yeah, that's
use their
right. Yeah.
built-in one, which then you have to
Okay.
wait for them to update it. If you need changes, then you have to wait for them to update it, which they're slow about.
Okay.
Or uh or you need to build something without a JIT. And so Hermes doesn't have a JIT. It's ahead of time compilation. It actually compiles it to bytecode. And
Okay.
so bytecode, not like binary, like not like machine language where you could run it natively, but it's an
Okay.
intermediate bytecode that is
Okay.
binary, and then it runs it. So it's not actually shipping JavaScript, it's shipping this like bytecode that's in between. And then
Okay.
Hermes
Yeah.
engine will then run that. And it's
Okay.
really, really
Gotcha.
fast. It makes Android especially a lot faster. That was what it was originally designed for. And then it also got shipped to
Hmm.
iOS, and now we ship it in production to both platforms.
Okay. And you said that's with that is using JavaScript core, you said? Or
So Hermes is a alternative to JavaScript core. You can still
alternative.
use
Yeah, okay,
JavaScript
sorry.
core, but yeah,
Okay.
you would compile it with Hermes, and then you ship a version of Hermes engine, and run that compiled bytecode. And JavaScript core is not used anymore. It's just Hermes.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, okay, yeah, sorry. Okay, and this all happens at the build and deployment kind of phase because like you said,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
so you'll actually have a file that is confusingly named main.js bundle. It's not a JavaScript bundle. That's the same
Okay,
name
okay.
that you would have for like JavaScript core, which would be a JavaScript bundle. But
Okay.
main.js bundle, if you're compiling it with Hermes, would actually be a binary file, and then it just consumes that. So
Okay.
it'll load that in and run that, and then that's really, really fast. Uh,
Okay, cool.
by the way, I noticed a question in there by Root
Yeah,
Explorer.
I
Why is
saw
it
it.
not used for
Yeah.
web like Bun? So Jared Sumner actually evaluated using Hermes for Bun, but Bun does need to be used for servers. It does
Yeah.
need to be used for long running processes. So the lack of a JIT actually starts to make it slower in the long run. It's way faster to start up,
Okay.
but then once it's started, then yeah. So if it was just CLIs, I think it would be right to use something
Yeah.
like Hermes, but yeah.
Yeah, and then there's also the whole like we don't need to get into runtimes necessarily, but there's the whole
Yeah.
winter CG for like edge
Right.
runtimes and like having uniform APIs because like I'm aware
Yeah.
of all this because when I was working at Netlify,
Mhm.
we use Dino there for the edge function, so this
Yep.
all came up and Bun's on the winter CG now too, I believe. So okay,
Okay, yeah.
cool. Okay, so we
Yeah.
got a bit of the lay of the land here. So
Mhm.
we got React Native, we've got the Hermes engine, and then there's some tool. I know there's some tools like developer tools that your company has made over time, and this kind
Yeah.
of all bundles into Ignite. I think, like, because I've heard of even before I met you because I got to hang out with you briefly at React Render
Mhm.
ATL last year.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember hearing about Reactatron back in like 2017, I think, which is
Yeah.
like from what I remember, it was an Electron app for debugging React
Yeah.
Native. Is that right?
Yeah, that's still
Okay.
correct. So we we needed something better than the debugging tools that existed at the time.
Okay.
And so we built our own. We built a and so like when Hermes came out, for example, sorry, when Flipper came out, for example, it was really
Mhm.
focused on the native side of things. We had Xcode and Android Studio to do debugging, but
Okay.
we really wanted a better way to run to get debugging information out of React Native. And so Reactatron became that. It's a very lightweight debugger. It works really well for what it does.
Okay.
It's fairly narrowly scoped. You know, you get things like you have a timeline, which shows you logs. It shows you network requests. You can inspect those network requests. Um, you can inspect your state if you're using Redux or Malbec State Tree or other supported plugins. Um,
Okay.
there's a lot of different features that it has that are very focused on stuff that we use every day.
Okay.
Reactatron is a very much a uh, it's focused on it does work with React. It's less necessary with React, I would say. You can just use
Okay.
it with React Web, and some people do. I actually have heard from people saying, "Yeah, we love it for React Web." But if
Okay.
you are using it for React Native, that's kind of where it shines because that's all we do.
Okay. Cool. Okay. So, uh, one more thing before we dig into Ignite. So let's talk about
Yeah.
React Native exists and like people were building apps with React Native, but then I'm not sure what the timeline was, but at some point, I think one of the people that founded Expo used to work at Facebook. I remember listening. I think I might have heard this on your own podcast.
Mhm.
Um, and basically, Expo came about. And for folks who've not done any mobile development or React Native, could you kind of give like the TLDR of what Expo is, and then we'll dive into Ignite, I guess.
Yeah, I'll try to do my best. I'm not quite as good as their team at pitching it, but I love Expo. So Charlie Cheever, what he did work at Facebook. He was one of the early employees at Facebook. He worked on some really cool stuff there. He then went on to found Quora, which
Okay.
uh, which he was a co-founder there. He worked there for quite a few years building that. And then when his time there ended, he had been working on the mobile side of things, and he had gotten into mobile and really felt like it was a lot of fun.
Okay.
And he but he thought, there's probably a better way to do this. And this was before React Native. This was
Okay.
2014, I think. And he and James I or Ide, I don't know exactly how to pronounce his last name, but
Okay. Cool.
they uh, they co-founded Exponent. It was named Exponent at the time, and it eventually became Expo. And
Okay.
they were going to build. They actually had something they were building that was pretty similar to React Native, and but it didn't use React. It was something different.
Okay.
And then when React Native came out, they both looked at it and said, "You know what? This is good. We can build on this," because they didn't really actually want to have to build that part of it. They had other things in mind that they wanted to build
Yeah.
around it. So
Okay.
Expo these days, and it's evolved over time. So be careful if you're reading something from 2019, for example. Um,
Okay.
but Expo in 2024 it's a collection of different things, all designed to make your life easier as a React Native developer. Uh, First off, they have a set of services. So Expo Application Services (EAS) that
Okay.
allows you to do like a build pipeline for your apps. You can deploy them directly to the App Store and Google Play. It lets
Okay.
you do much easier testing. Basically, allows you to kind of send this over to testers, beta testers, alpha testers, and
Okay.
um, it it gives you a bunch of other tools like logging, and whatnot. Um, it also is some runtime components, so you can install Expo into your React Native app and then use
Okay.
Expo libraries. And Expo libraries are famous for being some of the highest quality third-party libraries that you can find. So if you're
Okay.
using a library that's like prefixed with Expo dash something, and it's maintained by them, it's probably
Yeah.
going to be a higher quality than almost anything else out there. And
Okay.
so it's really nice to be able to pull that, plug that in. They also have this really cool thing called Expo Go, which allows you to develop without having Xcode or Android Studio on your machine.
Oh,
You
that's
just download
huge.
from, yeah, it's really cool. Download on your phone from the App Store, Expo Go or Google Play
Okay.
Store, and then you just scan a barcode and it will load the JavaScript bundle into your app and just start running your app right in that app. So you don't have to compile anything.
Okay.
So that's a
Okay.
really cool thing. And then you can do what you play off of that with something called a custom dev client, which allows you to build your own version of Expo Go that has some
Oh, no
customizations.
way.
And that really then leads to a thing called, this is all really confusing, I understand. But
I know.
believe me, these things
I'm
all
kind
make,
of following.
yeah, yeah. These things all make our lives easier. The
Yeah.
kind of holy grail of this is something called continuous native generation, CNG, Expo CNG. And the way that you
Okay.
think about this is, you know how React is like state and then render UI, right? Like
Yeah.
UI is a function of state. They're doing
Yeah.
that for
Classic.
native code generation. So you start with like an app.json file,
Okay.
which sort of like describes what your native code is supposed to look like. All of the
Okay.
setup, like what native libraries you need, what Cocoa pods you need, what Gradle third party dependencies. And then it generates your projects. So you can generate like your iOS and Android project and then just delete them and generate them again. Like it's no problem.
Oh,
You're not
okay.
you're not like in there like tweaking Objective C and Java and stuff like that. You can just delete those things and
Okay.
regenerate them at any time. And the benefit of this is that you don't have to check those into your source control. And if
Oh,
there's
okay.
like an upgrade, one of the hardest things with React Native is upgrading because you've made some tweaks to your native code and now you have to transfer those to the new. You just delete your native code, delete everything,
Okay.
regenerate, and it's up. The JavaScript side stays the same. So you're not like regenerating your
Okay.
JavaScript side. That's all like your code, but the
Okay.
native side gets regenerated. So that's another part of this as well. And then there's things like Expo Router and their
Mhm.
bundler and stuff like that. So all of those things, they just like Expo is continually just built and built and built cool stuff until it's gotten to the point where it's like, if I'm building a new React Native app right now, I want to start with
Yeah.
Expo because Expo is going to give me the best possible experience.
Yeah, no, that thanks for that explainer. That was really solid. And Gant said that's like
Mhm.
the best historical recollection of Expo as well. So
Thanks, Gant. I
um
appreciate it.
but I guess a couple things like I've seen the Expo router, which is pretty cool. I know they've worked on a V4, I think. I follow Evan Bacon
Yeah. Yeah.
on social, so just pretty up to date to some degree, even though I don't use it really. Um,
Right.
but what you were saying about the app to be able to run your code, to
Mhm.
me that is like a massive game changer because like I don't know. Maybe most people are developing React Native apps on Mac, but like as we know, not all the world has like,
Yeah.
the latest Mac. So like this literally means me as a Windows user can actually still use
Oh, yeah.
Expo and actually test it out, which I think is massive.
Yeah, you just need an
Yeah.
iPhone or iOS device and download the app, and then you can just use it right there. It also,
Yeah.
I use it all the time myself, even though I have a Mac, because you don't have to compile. It's already compiled. It's already up.
Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah, there's that too. Yeah. Okay, cool. So, yeah, no, it sounds like there's like just like and I didn't realize that that Expo started that early because like React only came out in
Mhm.
well not only it's been a long time now but React came out in 2013 so Expo or at least the beginnings of it followed pretty quickly after
Right.
so okay cool
Yeah. Yeah.
okay so
Absolutely.
yeah. Okay, so we've kind of talked about all the pieces and now
Hmm.
uh like we said, I'll shamelessly plug for you again here. So you work at Infinite Red. It's a React
Hmm.
Native consultancy company and you've obviously learned some best practices or the good tools to use when you're have a new client or improving like your dev experience for even your existing projects and
Yeah.
this is kind of what Ignite became
Yeah.
or
Absolutely. So
okay
I'm glad Gant's in the chat there. So what happened was, so Todd Gant and I own Infinite Red, and when our
yeah
three companies came together in 2015, we also made the switch over to React Native, which had just come out. React Native 0.11 had just come out, which added, I think that was the one that added Android support. And
Okay.
so Gant has always been kind of on the forefront of our technology. And we had, so Todd became CEO. I became chief operating officer at the time. I'm now CTO, but I
Okay.
was more on the operations side, and then Gant was more on the technology side, and he focused on like this transition over to the new React Native technology. We had been doing
Okay.
iOS, native before that. And so
Okay.
when that happened, Gant, along with one of our other like principal level engineers, Steve, they were working
Mhm.
on two parallel projects at the same time,
Okay.
both React Native projects, and they were kind of, this was 0.11, so a lot of bumps and bruises, a lot of, there was no expo to save you back then. This
Okay.
was
Okay.
like really, really early days. And so
Yeah.
they were comparing notes through 2015, 2016 early, and Gant then created Ignite. And so
Okay.
he was like, we need somewhere to, we first off, for new, like if Steve or Gant weren't starting the next React Native project,
Yeah.
they need somewhere to start. So we need to collate all these ideas and patterns into one place. And so there's
Okay.
that boilerplate project is kind of like the key of Ignite.
Okay.
And I think it's just called boilerplate the folder boilerplate there in
Yeah.
the repo.
Okay. So.
And so that's kind of the most important part of it. There's also a CLI,
Okay.
so that's really important as well. And then there's generators as well. You can generate components, you can generate data models and navigators and things like that.
Okay. So
So
scaffolding out of the box too. That's pretty nice.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And we wanted to be able to just kind of fast forward those first 2 weeks,
Okay.
setting up all the stuff, configuring all the stuff, figuring out what we did wrong, etc. Just fast forward that. Like, okay, now we're at that point. Now let's move to
Yeah.
the next thing, which is, actually build this out. And so
Okay.
that was in, 2016, early 2016, and we're now 2024. That's 8 years if I did my math right. Um
Yeah.
8 years, and we have continuously developed this over that time. And I think one of the benefits isn't just kind of getting us started, but it's also a way for us to, it's a very key uh, meeting point for all
Hmm.
of the project team, just like Gant and Steve did at the very beginning. All of the project teams at Infinite Red meet at Ignite and say, these are the things that we're finding work in our real world
Okay.
projects. And I often say this, we don't say that Ignite is the best way to make
Okay.
a React Native app. However, we know that it is an absolutely fine way to build a React Native app,
Okay.
and more importantly, it's low risk, low stress.
Yeah.
Risk is often overlooked as a factor when deciding on shiny new patterns. So, like
Hmm.
across Twitter, you'll see this. Oh, you need to be doing this because now, like, you're left
Yeah.
behind. If no, that's not what Ignite is. Ignite is like, you choose Ignite, you're not gonna get you're not gonna get fired for choosing Ignite. Ignite is gonna take
Okay.
you where you need to go. It is gonna do the things you need to do. It's been battle tested. We've shipped apps with it. We know it works. It's like a very,
Okay.
very safe choice, and we evolve it. So it may be a little behind in some ways, like, we're not going to be on the latest and greatest everything, but it's not that
Okay.
far behind. It's pretty close. And the reason we're doing all the latest and greatest stuff in our projects, we
Hmm.
have Ignite as a base, and then we'll like try stuff out in new projects. And we see, how does it work? Where are the pain points? What are the pluses? What are the minuses? We get our heads together. We maybe try it on
Yeah.
another project. We maybe try it on another project. When we're really confident that this pattern works, then it makes it back into Ignite. And that's where the
Yeah.
community really gets the benefit of all. You can always start with Ignite and do what we do, which is innovate on top
Yeah.
of it. But it's a very safe base. It's a very like battle tested is what I like to say.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Like, because the reality is, if you're like, a substantial client, they're not going to say, "Give me the bleeding edge of something and let's ship that to
Right.
prod," or like, or that
Right.
usually, at
Yeah.
least in my experience, that's not what's happened, and I imagine that's the same for you to some degree.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
so it makes sense, but like, it sounds like I'm paraphrasing here, but like it's a super mature project, and
Mhm.
it's literally like I know like I don't know much about React Native, and it's not because I know you and Gant, but it's the only name I ever hear about in terms of React consultancy. And so like
Yeah.
the fact that you've open sourced this, it's like here's like some best practices, some great tools. I
Yeah.
think that's like a major like value add to the community or anybody interested in starting with React Native. And like I was telling you the other day when we were chatting in DMs, like
Mhm.
over at OpenSauce, it's mainly a web application right now, but
Mhm.
I I created like I said, a little hello world maybe a month
Yeah.
and a half ago, just with the Expo to see if I could hook up our API, and I didn't get around to it because I was on vacation. But
Yeah.
uh, now that
Yeah.
I've heard about Ignite, I'm probably gonna go with this as a starting point because
Yeah.
I know that you all have like tons of experience with React Native. So um,
Yeah. You're
and
not gonna regret that, and that, I think that's it's sort of like a principle of least regret in this sort of a thing.
yeah,
Also, it's not just like what you see here in the repo. It's also uh, a bunch of documentation. There's the Ignite cookbook, which gives you a bunch of recipes that they don't rise to the level of like making it into Ignite,
okay,
but they're common enough that we have documentation on how to do it.
okay,
So, for example, right now we have a recipe for using Expo Router, but we are currently
okay,
evaluating it in two different projects, and that will probably make it into a future version of Ignite. But right now, you can
okay,
use Ignite, follow the recipe to switch it over to Expo Router, and be right where we are. So,
okay, cool, cool.
so that's big. And then hugely, there's a Slack community.infinite.red, and there's like thousands of Ignite users, developers in there. And so
Okay,
people, by the way, often ask us why Slack, why not Discord? And the reason is we asked our community if they wanted to go to Discord, and 90% said no, keep it in Slack. So we said
okay,
okay. And there are a lot of Discord communities, so I guess we'll be the one
yeah,
still on Slack.
yeah.
It
No,
also
I've
makes it easier for me to jump back and forth since I work in Slack all the time. So yeah,
yeah, and I guess with clients, you can invite them to connect in Slack, and like, yeah, it's a mix. But
yeah,
I was just gonna say, Gant was just giving a shout out to your company, saying
yeah.
you're not allowed to say half of the amazing companies that you service just due to NDA.
This is
So
true.
uh,
Yeah,
I'll just
we
assume that means you're just awesome. So
we have done some really big projects for some really big companies, some of the most recognizable names out there. And Ignite has worked for companies with millions of daily active users. It has scaled to hundreds of data models and screens, and
mhm.
so these are things that we definitely we've pushed it to its limits and find that it works very well. Now, with that said, we know where all the dragons are. We know places we
Yeah.
want to improve. We already have plans for this is version 9. We already have
Okay.
plans for version 10 or well on their way. Already starting to talk about version 11. So stuff like that is still in the works, and we have lots of ideas. I saw, for example, well, Rudix, or let's see, someone had asked about Tamagui, Hunka Hunka, it
Oh
looks
yeah,
like.
yeah,
Yeah,
for UI, like the not
yeah,
CSS, but the styling. Sorry.
yeah. Tamagui, it also helps a lot with, for example, sharing code between web and native, and we like it a lot. Tamagui has a lot going for it, and I would
Yeah.
definitely recommend checking it out. But we don't use this on every project. We wouldn't use this on more than, I would say, probably 30% of projects, even though it's a very good system. And unless
Okay.
something's like 70, 80% of projects, it's not going to make it into Ignite. So that would probably be more of a Ignite cookbook recipe situation.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean we don't like it. I mean, I like it a lot. I think it's a very cool
Mhm.
system. But it's pretty high bar to make it into Ignite. So yeah,
Okay. Yeah, and that brings up a good question I had, which obviously it's open source. Your team is 100% definitely contributing to it. Do you do you get contributions from the community often? Because like obviously it's very opinionated boilerplate, and you really do want it to be best practices, but I imagine you must have like either like maybe even the Expo team or other people within the community that do have valuable contributions to the project as well, or is it mainly your company?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a ton of people that have contributed to Ignite over the years.
Okay.
I don't even know what the number is up to, but it's I think in the hundreds.
Okay.
Um, and we're I don't know. I find the community contributions to be one of the most fun parts of Ignite. The fact that others are out there using it and wanting to improve it and whatnot. So we certainly see a lot of stuff come through. They're usually more
Okay.
on the smaller side, bug fixes and documentation updates and whatnot. The larger
Okay.
changes are driven more internally at Infinite Red, since that's kind of what Ignite
Yeah,
is
yeah.
Infinite Red's opinions on it. But we also have had people contribute for years who use it every day and just
Okay.
continue to stay. Actually, one of the things we didn't expect Ignite to be something. We always thought you would just spin it up like where it was and then just kind of go off and do your thing. But we had people
Okay, yeah,
coming
yeah.
back and saying, hey, I want to stay with your opinions even when they evolve. And
Okay.
so they wanted to like upgrade to the latest version of Ignite, and we're like, we didn't know this was going to be a thing.
Okay,
um
okay, okay.
and so there is actually a thing called Ignite Diff Purge, by a
Okay.
community member, Nicholas, who, um, I think Soderstrom. He put together a basically you can see a diff between any two versions of Ignite, and so you
Oh,
can.
okay.
It's sort of like React Native has the upgrade helper. It's a lot like that, but for Ignite, and it lets you kind of keep
Okay,
pace with
cool.
the latest Ignite stuff.
Okay, okay. No, that's super cool. Okay, cool. Well, I think I have like at least like a pretty decent high level
Yeah.
of kind of the React Native landscape and kind of what Ignite is. We talked about it a bit briefly before, but do you want to
Hmm.
maybe spin up something here? So like
Yeah. Let's
I
do it.
have I have Xcode installed. I know Expo works because I used it like a month ago.
Yeah.
Hopefully nothing goes boom, but we'll see.
Yeah. Let's
Um,
let's hope Frank didn't break it right before the demo.
so I guess if I want to get started, because it's a boilerplate, do I
Sorry, Frank.
clone it or do I use the CLI or what's the
So
approach for getting
let's just
started?
do it from the CLI. So go to any folder that you would want to spin up a new project in.
Okay, so Jamin stream. Cool.
Perfect.
Okay.
And now just run npx ignite dash CLI.
Dash
Um,
dash or just
that
dash? Oh,
just
okay, a package name,
it's
sorry.
all one, yeah, and you got an extra
Yeah.
N in there. It looks like. Yep,
Okay.
and then say, sorry, a
Oh,
couple of extra things here. Do that,
oh shit, I did it
and
again. Sorry. This is the beauty of live coding. Sorry. Yeah,
absolutely,
sorry, go ahead.
the keyword new, so just new, and then the name of our app here. Um,
Okay.
it could be
Let's call it.
Nick or whatever. Yeah,
I have a donut icon in front of me, so I'm just gonna
I
call it
like it.
donut. All right,
I
cool.
like it.
And just
Yep.
press enter now.
Just
Okay,
press enter
cool.
now. Yeah. And
Okay.
yes on this. NPX will install it. And then once that's loaded up, then it will do kind of a walkthrough.
Okay.
So it has this guided walkthrough for you.
I should switch
So you
to
can
the
accept the
coding view.
defaults here. Normally, I would do something like so. The bundle identifier. This is a thing both on Android and iOS. Normally, it'd be something
Okay.
like com dot uh, nikkiionline.donut or something. Like it would be
Okay, so this is like kind
your
of like my scope package, kind of like in
your scope
npm, kind
package,
of.
exactly. Yeah. And this
Okay.
is what you can't really change this later. So sometimes you'll see if you dig into the internals of like an app that's been bought by someone, you'll see that their bundle identifier still shows the old like bundle
Okay.
identifier. It's is just how it kind of identifies it on your
Okay.
device.
Cool.
Just hit enter
Uh,
there,
okay.
and then
So
now it's
Expo.
going to ask you if you want to use Expo. So
Okay.
we're actually changing this a little bit in the next version. Uh,
Yeah.
Even if you choose Bear, it's still going to give you some Expo because you're not going to get
Okay.
away from Expo. But it just depends on what you're trying to do. I do go with Expo for almost all apps, so that would be the
Okay.
way to
Yeah.
go.
I guess the quick question I'd have is,
Mhm.
would you go bare if you had an existing React Native project that you just want to dump in after, or is that the main reason or
Uh,
legacy reasons?
so primarily you would do that if for let's say that you were see every reason I've had in the past is pretty much not an issue anymore. So
Okay.
an example of this might be if you were doing a ton of native coding. If you needed to bring in a lot of native code and you needed to do it, very manually,
Okay.
then you might go with a bear. Really, the main difference is whether your iOS and Android folders are checked in or not. That's kind of the main difference, and whether you're using
Okay.
continuous native generation or not. Um, and some
Okay.
people
To
just
what you were
prefer it. They
talking
just
about before there with the where you can
yeah,
wipe it out okay.
yeah, exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Uh,
S-
and some people will just prefer the bear workflow. Like I want to go edit my Objective C and Java manually. I want to handle everything
Okay.
myself. I don't want you to do it. So that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the main
I,
reason I'd
I,
say.
I okay. So I'll go ahead and pick Expo, I guess. And
Yep.
yeah, I liked what
And
you were
now it'll
saying
ask you
about.
if you want Expo Go or
Okay.
CNG, which I talked about before. Expo Go is the simplest because
Okay.
then you don't have to like you could just do it on Windows,
Okay.
etc. But I think for demo apps, I usually just go with an Expo Go. There's no real difference between that and CNG if you're not making major changes. In fact, we're going to revamp this a little bit and make it even simpler in the future.
Okay. My iPhone is my camera at the moment, um like I'm gonna have to spin it up on an iPhone, right?
That you can do it. You can do Expo Go on a simulator, so that should be fine.
Okay, so we'll do
Yep.
that for now. But I
Yep.
do have an old iPhone which I should just leave around here handy just in
Yeah.
case
Yeah.
for any time I'm doing this, I guess.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll go ahead with go and we'll say take the
There's a question
defaults,
from
get rid.
Hunka Hunka about how would you compare Ignite with the T4 stack? So T4 is a lot more opinionated
Okay,
because it does come with Tamagui. Next, it comes with some stuff like Supabase, Drizzle, TRPC, etc. It is intended to be used from start to finish.
okay,
Versus Ignite is very much you got to realize most app or most companies already have a lot of that stuff already decided. Like they're not going to
okay,
decide to just use Supabase,
gotcha.
like out of nowhere. For a startup, like T4 might work fine. And this also goes for something like T3 stack,
Yeah,
Theo's stack. Um,
okay.
and
They're
for startups, that
unrelated,
might
right?
be the thing. Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
We
okay, okay.
we have had some internal conversations about having a Ignite stack that would bring in some more opinions around things like start to finish. But again, these things need to be validated. They need to actually work rather than being something that someone used on one project. Like this is
Okay,
something that needs to work on a lot of things. We take this very seriously.
yeah. Okay,
Leave the
cool.
demo
And
code in because we want to see that. So
okay.
the answer here would be no.
Um,
And I actually don't like this question. Remove demo
yeah,
code.
okay.
I think we need to
All
change
right.
that question. And then
Um, I have Bun
I
installed. I don't
usually
have, but
yeah, just do npm. Yeah, that's
yeah,
fine. It'll be
yeah, we
slightly
use
slower,
npm
but
at
that's okay.
work.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So now it's installing dependencies. So this might
Yep.
take. I have a pretty fast connection, but it'll do
Yeah.
its thing, the usual npm install. I
Yeah,
liked
that's
what you
right.
were saying. While this is just not compiling. Well, while it's getting the dependencies, I like what you said about with the I forget what you called it, but where you can just blow out the native stuff and it just regenerates. So it's really more a build
Yeah.
artifact as opposed to like code that like
Yes.
checking in, which is super
That's right.
nice. So
Yeah,
that's yeah,
exactly.
I would probably
It
go
makes
that
upgrades
route.
easier. It's just like it makes it so that like well it works really well with EAS because you just push up your code up to EAS and then they run the native generation and they're good to go.
Okay,
So stuff like that. Yep. So CD into
cool,
it,
cool.
CD donut,
Okay,
and
yeah, okay,
then you can do npm run iOS,
okay, all right.
or you can open code first so we can
Yeah,
look around
I'll
and
open
stuff. So
the
yeah.
code and
Yep.
then I'll just run it.
Perfect.
Oh, I forgot to do dash r. Sorry, hold on a sec.
Oh,
Little trick in VS Code. This opens it in the same window if you do dash r.
I did
I
not know
guess I
that.
trust it. Yeah, little nugget for the day. I mention it every now and then because every time I do, somebody's like, "Oh, I didn't know." So it's super handy
I
because like
love
I
that.
always used to open up the other one and stuff. Okay, so we're gonna do
That's so
npm
cool.
run iOS. You said
Correct. Yep. And then just let that
okay,
run in the background because it'll just
okay,
start compiling. So what this does, this starts the Metro bundler. Metro being similar to something like um, Parcel or Webpack or things like that.
okay, or V or yeah,
Um,
okay, gotcha.
it looks like you need to hit yes on this here.
Oh yeah, Expo Go on iPhone SE. Yes, sure.
Is that going on your real phone?
Oh, maybe it is because my phone is even though my phone's my camera, it's plugged into my camera, so maybe that's what's going
Okay.
on.
Let me think. How can we do this better? Um,
I can also switch to my other camera if you want. I just have to pop it in.
yeah. Um, let me think. You can pass in the sim. Oh no, it is opening the
Oh,
simulator.
yeah,
Good.
yeah, I did it.
All right.
Okay, cool. All right. Um,
Perfect.
this this I can't zoom in because it's not web,
If
but
you do Command 2,
okay.
Command 3,
Oh, wait, where'd it go? Okay, command three. Oh yeah, there we go.
there,
Okay, cool.
yeah. So that does make it a little bigger there.
Okay, perfect.
And I'm not sure why it's
Oh,
saying you can't.
let's see what it says
Oh,
here.
it died. Yeah.
Okay,
Why did it
maybe
die?
let me just go up here a bit. Let's see the stack trace. Oh, timeout.
Operation timeout. Just run npm run start.
Yeah.
So this will start the Metro packager. So
Okay.
yeah, just go back to your simulator and you can just press either I or just in here press R,
Okay. Just
or is it
command R
RR?
or
RR.
okay, R. It's pirate
With
code.
Command R, you started a recording, and this
Whoop.
happens all the time.
Okay, okay. Yeah. Oh no, it just happened. And I accidentally just stopped sharing my screen with you. Let me fix that.
Yeah, that's all right.
Da, da,
So
da.
the packager, what it'll do, it starts a little web server, and it has the JavaScript compiled bundle at a location like localhost on a
Okay.
port, and then React Native will reach out to that, download the bundle, and then execute it. Now, this is just during development. During production, it will actually have that bundle locally. It'll load
Okay.
that bundle from a local file in your app, and then just run it. So this is just a development thing only.
Okay. And Mark, your coworker in the
Yeah.
chat saying it would have asked you for your Apple developer account if you tried to build it to the actual device. Okay, so it was always the
Mhm.
emulator, the simulator. Okay.
Good to know.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's we won't get into that today, but there's the whole
Mhm.
developer account stuff which people can read up on.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, okay, so
Uh,
if we come
I
back,
think if you press I here, it might find your
okay,
the
yeah,
yeah. Try
there
that.
we go. Oh yeah, it's reloading it. Okay. Oh, cool, nice
Cool.
logo. I didn't see that before.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So the first load is going to take longer because it has to transform everything, from TypeScript. It is totally TypeScript and everything. Um,
Okay. Cool.
there we
Oh,
go.
here we go.
And now you have a login screen that is just fake. Like you put any password and then sign in. Um,
Okay.
and
I think
so,
there's a default. Yep.
yep. And you just hit.
Okay.
And then this is like a welcome screen. It's asking if you want to save that password.
I'm gonna shrink it again. How do you
Yeah, yeah. Command
resize
one,
it?
I think, or two.
Okay.
Yeah, command one or two.
Okay. Maybe do
Command
I'll
two
do
might work
command
better.
two.
Yeah, there you go.
Just because
Yeah.
it's good when it's fully zoomed, but I couldn't see
Yeah,
the
that's
bottom
right.
of the
Yep.
phone. So
Yep. And
apologies for
then
folks
this
who
is
might
like a
see it
welcome
tiny, but
screen.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Uh, there's a log out button as well that'll bring you back to the login screen. These are just demo screens that allow you
Okay.
to kind of, yeah. And so hit
Okay.
let's go.
So
And then this brings you to like the main navigator.
okay. So let's so yeah, and I guess this is
Yeah.
a good time I think to talk about like just native development. Let me bring back the
Yeah.
emulator. Um like their views. It's not like these things are written in JSX, but like you were saying before, like if this is running in the iOS simulator right now, but it's generating like views in
Yeah.
iOS, whether but if it was in Android, it would, I guess it generates them in Kotlin or what, I don't know what it is,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
the native view of
Uh,
it.
it is Kotlin now. It used to be Java. They switched
Okay,
it. They're not using Swift yet under the hood for iOS because Swift doesn't want to play well with others
okay,
very well. They're working on it. I mean, you
uh,
can do Swift, but
okay,
just the underlying code is still Objective C, which works fine.
okay. And yeah, just a few things here. I'll zoom down a bit,
Hmm.
but so we've got the QR code here. So this is if you wanted to go into Expo Go, I guess.
That's right. Yep.
Okay,
If
cool.
you wanted to just scan it with your phone, it would actually load
Okay.
it from your local server
Uh,
on your local. So it would refresh if you if you save a file, it would do like a
okay.
fast refresh right on your phone.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Cool. Okay. And I see.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's my local IP here.
these are all UI views. If you were to inspect this in Xcode, you would see the UI views. This is not a browser. This is not a web view. These are
Okay.
not divs. These are real native views.
Okay. Cool. I'm just gonna get a bit of real estate here. So let's maybe, I guess, so like Expo has a certain structure to how
Hmm.
the app gets laid out. I guess what's
Expo?
what's Expo in here and what's
Yeah,
Ignite? Like I see the Ignite folder, so I'm assuming there's
right.
Ignite stuff in there, but maybe kind of break
Yeah.
down the structure here.
So Expo only really expects like an app.tsx.
Okay.
So that's there. But this is a pretty minimalistic file. It loads up the
Okay.
splash screen and then grabs your app, which we'll look at, and then
Okay.
and just displays that. So this is just
Okay.
purely what you need for Expo. Now in the app
Okay.
folder, there's an app.tsx that is where everything kind of gets kicked off. That's where you are right now.
Okay.
And
Yeah. Okay.
we try to put a lot of comments in it, and we kind of showcase, how we would set up your app to load.
Okay.
A lot of the stuff you don't have to touch, like it kind of just works. um and but this is a place that you can add other things, like providers and whatnot. So this is
Okay.
just React in a lot of ways. There's some differences if you go down to like where it's rendering.
Yeah.
Well, in this case, it's just going to be rendering
Okay. So
a
you
an
got
app
a
navigator.
provider
But yeah, you can see
here.
the providers, error
Okay.
boundary, gesture handler, root view is important as well if you're handling gestures.
Okay.
You can see there the style equals and then dollar sign container. So
Yeah.
the dollar sign is a convention that we have, that
Okay.
is just styles are prefixed with dollar sign. That's the
Okay.
convention. There is a thing
And
called style sheet in React Native, but it's useless. It doesn't do anything. It literally just returns you the
okay.
object that you give it. So
Oh, it's
because
just
of
like a
that,
nice wrapper, or like to make people
they
feel
had some
better about
plans
like.
to like
Okay.
optimize it, and it nobody ever ended up implementing, and it really wasn't that useful anyway. So
Okay.
we just give you constants, and you type them as view style or text style or etc. And
Okay.
then you can use kind of a dialect of CSS here. So
Yeah.
it looks a lot like CSS. It'll have some differences, but it's pretty much CSS,
Yeah.
JS,
And
or
it.
CSS and
Yeah.
JS.
Yeah. It's a little out of scope what we're talking about today, but just to
Mhm.
touch on the styling a bit, is this what yoga is, or is yoga a separate project you bring into React Native, or is it like native, no pun intended, in React Native yoga, or?
So yoga, very good question. So yoga is what powers this. If you give
Okay.
it these attributes, it's a native library. But if you give it
Okay.
these attributes in native, then it will return a layout for you. And so you
Okay.
can then lay out your screen based on CSS, and that is built by Meta. So they created
Okay.
Yoga to essentially have on iOS and Android, CSS like layout system. Otherwise, you're
Okay.
stuck with whatever Apple or Google gives you, and those
Okay.
are not like CSS.
Okay. And this is obviously a layer abstracted on both of those native
Yeah.
platforms, and then under the hood
Yep.
it generates what you would not want to write yourself.
Exactly.
Okay,
That's right.
cool.
Yep. Yoga is
Yeah.
very
And
useful, but pretty much gets out of the way. You don't think about it.
okay. And Mark in the chat's mentioning again. So you were talking about the style sheet. He says it adds 35% overhead to creating styles in React Native.
Yeah,
Um,
and doesn't give you anything.
yeah, and Jay Larkey, who you might know from Twitter or X, is
Yeah,
asking, "Isn't Style X all the rage now?" Uh,
that is true. Style X is
okay,
on its way. Like anything with Ignite, we're going to be about a year behind because we have to try it on our own projects before we're going to
yeah,
put it into Ignite. You can try
yeah,
it now if you
okay,
want, though.
okay,
I like the idea of StyleX. I also like the idea of React Strict DOM, which is also in the same vein, where it's again bringing those things closer together, the web and the mobile side of things.
okay. So it's
So
just tightening the abstraction so that like you can write once,
yeah,
or
yeah.
okay,
So it's a strict subset of React DOM. You know, React DOM
okay,
obviously handles your divs and spans and everything. That is biased more toward the web side of things, but everything works
yeah,
in React Native as well. So
okay,
uh, I'm pretty excited about that. Tamagui kind of has its own, you know, it's better right now, and it may continue to be better.
okay.
Tamagui might be, but just kind of keep that in mind. That's coming.
Yeah. The I found it pretty easy to even though like I said I haven't really done any React Native aside from like
Yeah,
that like 1 or 2 days where I was just seeing if I could stand up a little work in progress kind of project. But
yeah,
like having done CSS and JS and like also just like typically I'm using class based stuff in React for web,
hmm,
but not to be confused with React Native web, which is a whole other thing.
yeah,
Uh, but like recently, I was working on some OG images for our app at Open Source, and I was basically using React to generate an image, and then I didn't have access to like a CSS style sheet, so it had basically all the inline styles, and it just feels familiar like here, and it's all
yeah.
not to sound cheesy,
It
but
does
like they
feel
always say,
familiar.
it's JavaScript at the end of the
Yeah.
day, right?
It
So
really is, and a
yeah,
lot of the tooling's similar. You'll find a lot of skills translate. I want to show off a
yeah,
couple things here. One is
yeah.
obviously we set
Go
up
for it.
things like the gesture handler, the error boundary, the safe area provider, keyboard handling. We're actually working on an even better version of keyboard handling. There's a lot of
Okay,
stuff here that if you just start with Expo or you just start with one of these others, you're going to end
yeah,
up implementing and you're not going to know how to do it. And you're going to have to be Googling and you're going to have to be looking at. If you use
okay,
Ignite, it's already done and you probably never even notice. It just works. It's just kind of like
okay.
already handled. So that's important. One of the big ones is internationalization. So if you
Oh
look
yeah, yeah,
in the folder tree,
yeah.
um, let's see, I don't remember offhand. So there is I18N there.
Okay.
It's toward the
Oh, here we
top.
go.
Yep, right
IATN
there.
test.
And you can see that we have an Arabic, Korean. I think we have a French one. Yeah, thanks to our
Yeah.
friend David Loulette.
Okay.
Um, and English. So we have real translations of the demo app built into this.
Oh, cool.
And
That's nice.
this
Out
is
of the
how
box.
we, yeah, yeah. It's really cool. And this is how we do it. This is how we handle translations within Ignite. And a lot of these systems out there do not handle it. Or if they do, they don't handle things like Arabic correctly, which is a right to left language. So
Okay.
Maz
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Chami and Harris, two guys on our team, both speak Arabic, and so
Okay.
they translated it and made it work really well with right to left languages. Um,
Okay. Cool.
we've done some improvements for accessibility as well. There's a lot of things that are just sort of like pre-configured for you. So if we go to a component or a screen, let's go to a screen. Let's go to like the welcome screen.
Okay. Okay. Cool. And
That's
also,
and
side note
yeah,
for your company, that's
yeah,
great that your company is diverse, like in
yeah,
like a really good sense. Not this like tokenized. We have these people. It's
right,
like this is a real use case, and this is like people's lived experiences that are actually improving your project. And this is like just wanted to
exactly.
call that out. That like that's a great example of why you really want to diversify your team. So just shout
I
out
agree, and
to all of you.
and this is like a very practical example of it where I would not have thought of right to left languages. It just wouldn't
Yeah.
have occurred to me like right to left. That it's different. It's not
Yeah.
only different, they expect the buttons that would be on the top right to be on the top left. It's not just the direction of the text. It's
Okay,
things
okay.
are all, it's like the whole thing is mirrored. And when you don't do that, it feels wrong to them. And
Mhm.
so all those things work here. By the way, quick little shout out. You'll see MobX State Tree in
Yeah.
here at the top, MobX React Lite. We do use MobX State Tree. It's our favorite way to build with. I think it's great. I'm one of the core maintainers. I actually have a YouTube video out about it. If you go to
Okay,
Jamin's
cool.
Code Quests on YouTube, you can see
Oh
sort of
yeah.
what that's
Let's
all
go pull it
about.
up.
Um,
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. I'll find it while you're
yep.
talking.
And so you'll see that throughout the, however, we're going to either make it easier to remove, and there is a recipe for removing it and
Okay.
swapping out with Redux or whatever you want. Zustan, everybody seems to be in love with. Um, or or we may remove it altogether from the boilerplate, become less opinionated there,
Okay.
and then have easy ways to add it back in. I
Okay.
I still love it, and I poll the team and ask how, what would you prefer, and most of them say, yeah, I'd prefer to use MST. Anyway, if you look down here,
So just
uh,
as a funny
yeah, yeah,
comment
good.
in the chat, Jay Larky saying you are single-handedly keeping MobX alive. Yeah,
I don't know
you
about
and
single handedly, but I do feel
and
like I'm,
Kitsa is a big fan too.
yeah, Kitsa, yeah, and
Yeah.
Tyler as well. Tyler has been great keeping it moving forward.
Cool, cool.
And Subramanya, who are the other two guys on the core team. If you go down, you'll
Yeah.
see there's an is RTL, uh, like Boolean, but also you can see right,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's is RTL, and then if you look down, yeah, this is where it swaps, yeah, it swaps where the little eyes are. So if
Okay.
you swap it over to Arabic, the eyes will be on the other side.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
kind of fun.
Gotcha.
It actually just trans transforms it. But there's a you'd have to refresh that
Oh
fully.
yeah. No. I
Anyway,
saw it. It changed
yeah.
before. I saw it. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So, but there is you'll have to, I forget the name of it. There's a title TX or something like that further
Okay.
up the file.
Let me go up. Fine. Title. No.
Maybe it's text TX. It's something
Oh yeah. There's a
TX.
text. Okay. Here. Text. Here. Wait. Text.
Right there,
Haskell.
TX.
Oh,
You
TX.
were on
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a write TX, which is common.logout. So that will look at your translation strings and find um, the path common.logout and then display that by default.
Okay. Cool. Cool. Becca, my
Oh yeah,
coworker who
Becca's
you
going to be
know, yeah.
talking to Tyler. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
and that's like 100% coincidental because me and Becca do work together, and it just happened that you scheduled this day to uh to do Ignite,
I
and
love it.
yeah, I saw it yesterday. Yeah, tomorrow we're hanging out with Tyler and
Tyler's super cool.
Becca. Give a shameless plug to her
Yeah.
work, but Becca created a workspace for all that
Nice.
stuff if you want to check it out, and that's kind of like what we're working on. And it just kind of
Yeah.
surfaces like, the projects you're potentially working on, like the repos, and
Yep.
you can get kind of better insights into it. So that's my mini plug. But anyways, thanks for joining
Awesome.
us, Becca. Okay, yeah, so sorry, you were saying the right TX. So this is when you want to reverse it. Same thing again.
In this case, it's just a header. It's the right hand side. This will
Okay.
also swap to left automatically, even though it says right when they're in a right
Okay.
to left language. But it uses
Okay.
common.logout. If you wanted to change that, you could use write text and then put in what you want there. So you just change TX to TEXT
Oh,
and
okay,
maybe try
instead
it.
of the I18N key. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay, yeah,
and
gotcha.
change so currently it'll say missing translation. And
That
if you
makes
change
sense.
the right TX to TEXT,
Oh, okay, yeah, gotcha. Then it's
sorry, right
non-international.
text. You still need the right part. Sorry.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Then it
Okay, yeah.
changes it to just string. So that's how you swap it out for just. So it's TX. It's a convention. TX for translation string, and text
Okay.
for if you just want the string there. Um,
Okay, cool.
One thing I want to point out, if you click the Let's Go button on the simulator,
Okay.
you'll see that we have a whole component library that if you scroll down, it's pretty long. It shows you all the
Okay.
built-in components and icons and stuff that come with Ignite. Now, we're
Oh, this is
not
nice.
trying to be like a full-fledged UI kit here. We're
Yeah.
really what we're looking to do is make it easy for you to build any flexible app and bring in your own UI kit. But it comes with some things built in and it has some really useful stuff. So you can
Okay.
scroll all the way down if you want to the components. They're all over. You can also click the left drawer there,
Okay.
the hamburger menu on the top left,
Oh yeah. So. Okay.
and then that gives you, you know,
Okay. All the
more
different types.
shortcuts, yeah, to get to anything,
Oh,
and it'll
okay.
jump right to that spot. And that
That's
also
super
gives you
nice.
examples within the code about how to do stuff like that, like how to make a drawer and how to jump to a spot.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
Um,
say, which is super
yeah,
nice. It's not just like here's the things you can use. This is how you use it, which
exactly.
is super helpful, especially like somebody like myself who hasn't really done React Native, being
Yeah,
guided and like assuming I'm being guided in the right way to do these things. So,
yeah,
that's super cool. I'm excited to dig into this, to be honest.
yeah.
Um,
We also
uh,
show how to use an API in the podcast tab, and
okay.
so that
Oh, cool.
loads in, and then there's also it shows the power of MobX State Tree with the favorites. So if you hit a yeah, so if you click a favorite and then hit the button, it'll just show those, and it filters using MobX State Tree, which is really cool.
Okay, that's nice.
And there's a debug screen as well that shows you some various information about the
Okay.
app, and every app should have a debug screen that you obviously would hide or
Okay, cool, cool.
obfuscate somehow once you ship to production, but has all this information built in.
No, this is super cool. And I gotta say, I could 100% talk to you all day, but I know you do
Yeah.
have a hard stop today. Just wanted to let you know it. So it's like it's about 11:08 your time. So just let me
Okay.
know when you gotta hop off. But
Yeah, you bet.
this is like super awesome. Like I feel like I mean I think having React experience obviously will help me just ramp up super
Hugely.
quick, but
Yeah.
the fact that like all these things are in place, like even I18N, because like
Mhm.
that's not, I don't think I've ever worked anywhere on a greenfield project that had I18N in it day one,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. You're
Like,
always like bringing it in later,
yeah,
and
and somebody says, "Oh, somebody from France is trying to use the site and everything's in American English," and
yeah.
so like but I just like that it's there out of the box,
Mhm.
because then it's just so much easier to just, you don't even have to,
It
again, you
is,
don't have
and
to think about it. You have sensible
it's not
defaults
even
to
that
build.
much harder to use translation strings. It really is not. Like you just put in
Yeah.
common.logout, you go into the JSON file, you find common, you add a logout string, and you're done. Like,
Yeah.
maybe just in English to start with, and I think there's a fallback. I could be wrong on that. But I think there's a fallback to the I
Let's
actually
see
don't know
here.
if this is true or not. If not, then sorry, but I
Okay.
think there might be a
Yeah.
fallback to English or whatever is your default language. So if
Okay,
a
yeah, yeah.
translation string is missing in a translation, it'll just use the English one.
Yeah.
But uh, but yeah, then you can just simply ship that entire JSON file off to your translators and
Mhm.
have them translate all the strings, and then drop it in, and you've got your translations, and it just works.
Okay.
Like you're good to go.
I do have a question about this, because like when I worked at
Yeah,
Autodesk, I was working on like a fairly large application. It's like project management for like, like Netflix or gaming studios and stuff. And we had internationalization. And one of the things that I don't think they did was like, let's say, for example, I'm just going to put a key that doesn't exist. And if I come back to, I forget where do I go to the home page again? Uh, well, it doesn't matter. But like, like say the key doesn't exist, you give the error. But one thing we ran into, or at least from what I remember, is like, say there's common.logout, and then all of a sudden we say somebody needs to do the Portuguese translations, and they're
yeah,
not complete, and then parts of the app would be in English and parts would be in
yeah.
Portuguese. Is that something you do as well, or and then it just gets filled in as you go along, or?
I That's what I don't really know. I'd have to
Okay.
I'd have to test it and see what our
Okay, yeah,
code
this is
does.
like the
Would
default. Yeah,
not be
okay, yeah, yeah.
that difficult because you just have to do a deep merge of the two. They're actually not JSON now that I
Okay.
think about it. It's actually TypeScript. So if you go to
Okay, it's TS
en.ts,
files. Okay, okay, so
yeah,
okay, yeah.
en.ts, yep.
Oh, that's
We
even
actually
better.
switched from JSON over to TypeScript, and the reason we did that was because then we could infer the uh we could infer um what we need there, and this is actually really cool. So add into common there, add a new thing,
Yeah.
some
Okay.
sort of a new thing.
Yeah, YOLO. So a big fan of YOLO.
Yep.
Okay.
Now go to the French version,
Okay.
and this is
Okay.
why.
Okay,
This is
because it's
why we do
missing the
TypeScript,
keys.
because now it's saying YOLO is missing
Yeah.
from your French translation. So that's how we get around this.
Okay.
Um,
And
and
that's super
obviously,
nice.
then yeah. And how this works is it's the translation, which is just the type of the English. So English
Okay,
becomes
yeah, yeah.
the primary one. Now you could obviously, if you're a French developer, maybe make French the default, and then
Okay.
English would derive off of that. And that's not that
Yeah.
hard to do. Um,
Yeah.
but
This is
yeah,
super
I
nice too.
do
This
need to
this
go in a couple minutes here. But yeah, this is just one example. I think we put weeks and weeks and weeks of work into this, and it came out of a real app that we had built. And so this
yeah.
is like an actual pattern that's being used in real world,
Yeah. No, yeah, yeah,
and
I'm definitely
everything
gonna
in
let you go,
Ignite that
but
way.
but
Yeah,
one thing I was gonna say, the smart thing
yeah,
here, if you're doing TypeScript in general, React Native or not, inferring types as much as you can is the way to go. And
yes,
this is super nice that you get like the keys, because not only is it the app's not work, like your build is gonna fail. Like you can literally
yeah,
not go to prod because hey, you forgot Portuguese translations,
right. And if
which
you
might
want to
not
go
sound
to
like a big deal, but it could be huge.
absolutely, and if you want to go to the Portuguese uh, file and just put the English one in there for now, you can do
Yeah,
that. But that's your choice. That's
yeah,
not like or maybe you just go to Google Translate and do like
yeah,
the
yeah,
not very good version of it or something. But
yeah.
or you do it right and you get the real translation.
Yeah. Cool, cool. I do want to be super mindful of your time, Jamin. So I gotta
Yeah,
say, I know we kind of did a bit of a speed run, but this was like
yeah,
super informative. This project looks really compelling to start a React Native project, and who knows, maybe we can hang again on another stream sometime and maybe dig a little
absolutely.
more deeper into some of the stuff. And I'm just gonna drop links for yourself, Ignite, and Infinite Red. Uh, if you
I
need React
appreciate it.
Native consultancy, Infinite Red is probably the place to go. No, they don't
Yeah,
sponsor me,
awesome.
but they're good people there, and I know they do good work. So check that out. And yeah, aside from that, thanks for hanging, everybody. Great conversation in the chat today. And thanks again, Jamin. I'll let you go and see y'all next week, folks. Later.
Thanks a lot.
Yep. Later, Jamin.